I earned my degree online at Arizona State University. I chose to get my degree at ASU because I knew that I'd get a quality education, they were recognized for excellence, and that I would be prepared for the workforce upon graduating. To be associated with ASU, both as a student and alum, it makes me extremely proud, and having experienced the program, I know now that I'm set up for success. Learn more at asuonline.asu.edu.
Hey everyone, and welcome back to Exposed Scandalous Files of the Elite. I'm your host, Jim Chapman, and we're back with this emergency episode as we have a verdict in the government versus Sean Diddy Combs. Look, I have spent over a year covering this case, some 66 episodes in total, and it all boiled down to this. So I'm going to catch you up with what has occurred this week all the way up to that verdict, and we're going to start with Monday. Now, on Monday, the judge instructed the jury on the charges. He defined the crimes that the jury could potentially find were committed by Combs, and he released them to start their deliberations. And it was very scary when about an hour into those deliberations, the jury sent a note to the judge, and they said they were concerned that one of the jurors could not follow the judge's instructions. They weren't very specific on what that particular juror could not follow, but the judge sent a note back to them reminding them of their obligation to follow his instructions on the law. A little while later, another note was sent that was toward the end of the day, and they asked a question about the distribution of controlled substances, which the judge said he would answer on Tuesday, and Tuesday came, and the judge did just that. He sent the jury a note explaining what the word distribution meant, which was actual, constructive, or attempted transfer. To distribute simply means to deliver, to pass over, or to hand over something to another person, or to cause it to be delivered, passed on, or handed over to another. Distribution does not require a sale. Jury got that note, and hopefully that answered their question. Sean Combs was in court Tuesday. He stopped to talk to his mother, Janice Combs, and she was seated in the gallery through the end of the day, and she left the courtroom with marshals. Now, Combs did lean over and whisper to his mother, telling her he was headed back to his cell. Quote, "Just relax. It's going to be all right," he said. He added that he loved her outfit. She was wearing a green and cream zebra print outfit. We moved on a little bit further into the day, and the jury sent another note to ask the judge for transcripts for two particular witnesses. That request was honored, and while the jury's reviewing that, some interesting things in the courtroom. Dana Tran, who is the mother of Sean Combs' youngest child, was back in court as well. She was seated beside his mother, and they're anxiously awaiting a verdict, right? The jury then sent a note at 10:15 a.m., and they asked for several transcript sections. They asked for Cassie Ventura's testimony regarding the hotel hallway incident, if you will. They asked for Ventura's testimony regarding the events at the Cannes Film Festival and those that immediately followed that. They asked for any testimony in regards to freak-offs with Daniel Phillip, and they also asked for Phillip's testimony regarding the Essex Hotel incident with Ventura. And a reminder why they would want Phillip's transcripts. So Phillip, if you'll remember, that was a male review manager who testified early in the trial that he was paid between $700 and $6,000 to have sex with Cassie on several occasions. The jury also requested any testimony from Ventura regarding her interactions with Phillip. Now, Phillip was one of the first witnesses to take the stand when the trial began, and he testified not only about being paid to have sex with Ventura, but also about an occasion when Ventura instructed him to urinate on her while Combs watched. Phillip further testified that Combs recorded them having sex on one or two occasions using one time a phone and the other time a camcorder. So during their first encounter around 2012, Phillip testified that he went to a New York City hotel and he expected to perform at a bachelorette party. Instead, he found only Ventura there and a man wearing a mask, which he said he recognized Combs' voice even with the mask on. Phillip said he received money from Ventura during that time to have sex with her. He also recounted an incident in which he testified that he saw Combs shout at Ventura before dragging her by her hair into the bedroom, and he said he heard Ventura screaming and reportedly saying, "I'm sorry," while also hearing what sounded like Combs slapping her. Phillip said he did not report that incident because he feared for his life. He was quoted as saying during the trial, quote, "I was completely shocked and messed up in my head. There was nothing I could do. She was afraid. I could see that she was afraid." While they're reviewing those transcripts, I'm going to give you a little more depth on the jury. So the jury panel, it's made up of 8 men and 4 women. They range in age from 30 to 74. And juror number 2, he's a 69-year-old man. He works as a massage therapist in Manhattan, and he has a Bachelor of Fine Arts in Acting from New York University. Juror number 5 is a 31-year-old man who works as an investment analyst. His hobbies include golf, tennis, and video games, and he describes himself as an active churchgoer. Juror number 25 is a 51-year-old man who works as a scientist and lives with Manhattan with a domestic partner. Juror number 28 is a 30-year-old woman who lives in the Bronx with her mother and brother, and she works as a deli clerk at a grocery store. Juror number 55 is a 42-year-old woman who lives in Manhattan with her fiance. She works at a nursing home, and she said she is not a fan of the news. Juror number 75 is a 68-year-old man who is retired and previously worked in finance. He lives in Westchester County with his wife and said he listens to old Indian music and likes to play cricket and volleyball. Juror number 116 is a 68-year-old man who lives in Westchester County with his wife and kids, and he's a retired lineman. Juror number 160 is a 43-year-old woman who is a physician's assistant and works with elderly patients. She lives in Westchester County with her husband and kids. Juror number 184 is a 39-year-old man who lives in the Bronx with his brother. He's a social work program supervisor and a part-time security guard who has a master's degree in social work. Juror number 201 is a 67-year-old man who has 2 adult children and works as a logistics analyst, and he lives alone in Westchester County. Juror number 217 is a 74-year-old woman who works as a treatment coordinator, has a bachelor's degree in sociology, and lives alone in Manhattan. She does not have children. And juror number 230 is a 57-year-old man, works as a manufacturing architect, and has a master's degree in mechanical engineering. He lives with his wife and kids in Westchester County. Now, this juror started as an alternate. If you'll remember, he replaced the juror that was dismissed over inconsistent disclosures about where he lived. So that's a look back at that jury. Now, about 2:00 p.m., the jury sends another note to the judge. They said they reached a verdict on counts 2, 3, 4, and 5, but they were unable to reach a verdict on count 1, which is that racketeering conspiracy charge. And I'm going to remind you at this point that Combs was charged. Count 1 was racketeering conspiracy. Count 2, sex trafficking by force, fraud, or coercion, which pertained to victim 1, Cassie. Count 3, transportation to engage in prostitution, pertaining to victim 1, Cassie, and commercial sex workers. Count 4 was sex trafficking by force, fraud, or coercion that pertained to victim number 2, Jane. And count 5 was transportation to engage in prostitution that also pertained to victim number 2, Jane, and commercial sex workers. Now, if you'll remember, there were many more counts, but they dropped those counts because the prosecution didn't feel like they proved their case. Also, a reminder, count 1 carries the heaviest penalty. That's the life in prison for racketeering conspiracy. Counts 2 and 4, they have a minimum sentence of 15 years and a max of life in prison. Count 3 and 5 each carry a maximum sentence of 10 years. They're the lightest of all of them. And both the prosecution and defense have indicated when the judge received the note that they wanted the judge to push the jury to continue deliberating. And that's just what he did. He called them into the courtroom and he simply said this, quote, "I received your note that you've received verdicts on counts 2 through 5, but not on count 1. I ask at this time you keep deliberating." And he sent them back into the deliberation room. Now, if you're hung up on that first charge, which is racketeering conspiracy, let me break that down for you quickly. To convict Combs on the racketeering conspiracy charge, the jurors must find that he and a co-conspirator committed 2 predicate acts within 10 years, according to the verdict sheet that was given to the jury. And those acts include acts involving kidnapping, acts involving arson, acts involving bribery, acts involving witness tampering, acts involving forced labor, acts involving sex trafficking, and acts involving transportation for the purpose of prostitution, which another predicate for that would be acts involving drug distribution. So they have to find at least 2 of those predicates, 2 of those acts committed within 10 years to find him guilty of count number 1, racketeering conspiracy. So it was just about 10 minutes after the jury was told to go back, keep deliberating, that the jury sends a note, says, "We're done for the day." And they went home. Sean Combs then rises as court ends, and he whispered to his 6 adult children who were seated in the second row behind him before leaving the courtroom. Now, he did lean over again to his mother. She asked him a few questions, and he told her, quote, "I'll be all right, love you," and then tapped his chest. And at this point, if you're keeping track, the jury has been deliberating for 14 hours. So Wednesday comes right now when I'm recording this, and Diddy enters the courtroom. He hugged his 4 attorneys, Jason Driscoll, Nicole Westmoreland, Alexandra Shapiro, and Mark Agnafilo, and he waved to the people in the gallery. Combs' mother and sister, they were seated in the family section, and Combs was sitting alone at the defense table as his lawyers were kind of standing and they were circled off to the side. Combs' adult children, they arrived a little later, and 2 of his sons brought female friends, I guess you could say, with them, and the group squeezed 10 people into a row that normally fits 8 people. So Combs turned to face his relatives, and he told them he was headed downstairs to wait, which meant a holding cell. "Stay strong," he said, and bowed his head to pray. His children bowed their heads as well, and Combs led a prayer saying, "God, please watch over my family." He asked that the jurors and his family be blessed, and the family responded with amen and clapped. So the marshals, they escort Combs out. His children stood to walk out, and everyone else in the courtroom also stood. So everybody's waiting, but they didn't wait long. It wasn't much longer that the jury sends a note saying they reached a verdict. Of course, Combs is then fetched to come back in the courtroom. Everybody's back in there. Everybody's on pins and needles. The judge at that point cautions everyone in the room and the overflow room to maintain order after the verdicts are read. The jury then enters the courtroom, and it's just like you see on TV. The jury foreman stands up, and they read the counts. And I'm going to do it just like they did. Count 1, racketeering, conspiracy, not guilty. Now, the potential sentence for racketeering conspiracy was life in prison. Sean Combs was found not guilty. The prosecution did not prove their case. Count 2, sex trafficking by force, fraud, or coercion as it relates to victim number 1, Cassie Ventura. Verdict, not guilty. Now, that had a minimum 15-year sentence and a maximum of life in prison. Count 3, transportation to engage in prostitution, pertains to victim 1, Cassie Ventura, and commercial sex workers. Verdict, guilty as charged. maximum sentence of 10 years. Count 4, sex trafficking by force, fraud, or coercion pertaining to victim number 2, Jane, not guilty. Minimum 15 years, max life in prison. Count 5, transportation to engage in prostitution pertaining to victim number 2, Jane, and commercial sex workers. Verdict, guilty as charged. Potential sentence, maximum of 10 years. Let's talk about this for a minute. Am I surprised? No, not at all. If you would have asked me yesterday, what do I think that the prosecution has proved in this case, I would have told you the transportation to engage in prostitution for sure they proved, and that was what he was charged with. The biggest mistake they made, I told you at the beginning, as well as soon as she finished her testimony, I did not believe Jane, period. Jane, in my opinion, she had a sugar daddy, and I think she's full of shit in a lot of what she said. I told you then, and I'll tell you now, I think it hurt the prosecution's case because I think if Jane was not believable, they would question Cassie, who I thought was very believable. I'm not saying he wasn't guilty of all of these things. As a matter of fact, I think he was. But I'm saying the prosecution did not prove that in court beyond a reasonable doubt. But there it is. So what do I think is going to happen to Sean Combs from here as far as these charges are concerned? If I were a betting man, I would say the maximum amount of time, if he gets jail time at all, I would say the maximum amount he's going to get is 5 years. And I would say that he's going to get, obviously, credit for time served. So 4 years, he may spend 4 years in prison, but that's a reach because at the end of the day, y'all, he is basically convicted of paying people to fly in a plane for prostitution. Most people that are convicted of engaging in prostitution from the side of the John, if you will, most people in that situation do no jail time. You get probation. I have no idea what this sentence is going to be. Yes, technically he could get 20 years because he could get 10 years for each count and it could run consecutively. I do think that these will be concurrent, meaning that he can get 10 years for one count, let's say, and 10 years for the other and only serve 10 years in jail. I don't think he's going to get the maximum penalty here. At the point this is read, what happened? Well, defense attorney Mark Agnafilo, he stood up and he said that Sean Combs should be released on appropriate conditions in light of the fact that Sean Combs has been acquitted of racketeering and sex trafficking. He said Combs would go back to his house in Miami and he would abide by the conditions set by the court. Now, he went on to say Combs does not have access to a plane and his entire family is here. And any 5 of them can sign on to a bond. And he requested that Combs be released. Immediately, the judge confirmed that and said, is it your proposal that he leaves the courtroom and walks outside? And the defense attorney said, yes, it is. Comey then said the government opposes that motion. She said the trial evidence showed extensive abuse and prolific drug use that the defense did not contest. She said Sean Combs continues to commit a litany of crimes after he knew he was under investigation, and she argued that Combs did not respect the law and would likely commit new crimes if released. Comey also confirmed that the government intended to seek a sentence of incarceration and that Combs still faced 20 years possibly of prison time for the 2 counts that he's convicted of. The defense attorney shot back and said that Combs was looking at potentially spending the rest of his life in prison, but he was acquitted of those charges. He was quoted as saying, Mr. Combs has been given his life by this jury, and said he would be nothing short of a fool if he violated any condition set by the court should he be released. Quote, he treasures, I assure you, the opportunity he has been given, and he will not run afoul of anything the court imposes on him. And it's also important to note that after the verdict, Combs faced the courtroom gallery and clapped. And before he was led out of the courtroom by marshals, Combs knelt down in front of his chair. He bowed his head like he was praying, When he stood up, he faced the gallery and clapped, and that prompted the gallery to clap and cheer. That kind of makes me sick. Combs' attorneys all exchanged hugs as the gallery continued to cheer for them. And there you have it. In case you missed it, convicted of only 2 of 5 counts. And look, yes, he was found guilty of some things, but those counts, count 3 and count 5, those were the lightest counts he could be found guilty of. And certainly they were proven in court, but those are the ones you want to be found guilty of, not the other ones. Of course, sentencing should be soon, within the next month, I would say. And there's going to be a lot coming out in the next couple of days that I'll bring you. Check out Crime Wire Weekly. Kelly Jennings, host of Unspeakable, and myself, we cover the top true crime headlines throughout the country. And until next time, for exposed, scandalous files of the elite, I'm your host, Jim Chapman. Much love.